everyone, welcome to the lecture. Today we have Asi Burak telling us about publishers in the age of free-to-play, and we can start.
Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon in Kiev. Before I start, I wanted to, and you can use the public chat please, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. So maybe the first one is, what people think are some of the challenges of being of using publishers in free-to-play mobile. Is it something that you think people need? And if you think they need it, what would be the challenges to use publishers? Why would a developer would even do it?
Sorry to interrupt you, but can you please share your screen, your presentation? And also there is a like 10 to 30 seconds delay between you and the viewers. So okay. The chat might be a bit delayed for you.
Yeah. I'm going to present the slides, but before that, I want to really hear from if the audience can kind of think about it. I'm also happy to write it in the chat. The question is, do we need? What do you think? What are the challenges of publishers in mobile free-to-play? Why would developers even need them? Okay, let's try to see if we get some answers. If not, we'll continue. But I just want to see before we even start what people are thinking. Any thoughts, ideas? Okay, let's begin. My name is Asi Burak. I'm coming from Tilting Point. Tilting Point is one of the leading world publishers in mobile. We call it mobile first, which means that we publish mobile games and it could move to PC and other platforms, but it starts with mobile. I see some answers that starts coming in. That's great. So audience understanding, I think that's true. This is something that publishers can help with, and monetization for sure. These are definitely places that we'll talk about as places that publishers can focus on. Tilting Point, as I mentioned, is a publisher that is growing rapidly. In fact, we also have a new office in Kiev itself. I think they have like 10 people now, and as you can imagine, we want to focus in Kiev on the engineering power and data power. So this is kind of it's going to be our center for data sciences. Our headquarters is in New York City, where I am, and we also have offices in a big one in Barcelona. We have an office in Seoul, Korea. We have an office in Boston. But Europe is definitely, at this stage of the game, Europe and East Europe is a very, very strong environment for us. I'm a senior vice president for business development. When I came to the company 4 years ago, there was no business development at all, and I started to create this team. But what I'll tell you today is more about the unique model and that we developed. And I'll try with you not to do it as a sales pitch for Tilting Point, but more about why we did certain things we did, why we developed this model, why we do what we do, and how it answers the challenge of the market. Because my main assumption, the most provocative thing I can say is that I think that traditional publishing in mobile free-to-play is not working. When I say traditional publishing, that means the idea that you are a developer, you have a game, maybe you created a presentation, maybe you created a prototype, maybe you even have the game in soft launch, and then you go to a developer and you tell the publisher, and you tell the publisher, I want money to publish my game, right? This is the traditional model in every other platform. You make something before launch, and you come to a publisher that will help you to launch the game, and he needs to make a bet. He needs to put money on the table, and you both are going to share the revenue in 50-50 or something similar. That model was something that Tilting Point itself did until 2017, and a lot of other publishers. And my belief is that, and our belief is that it's not going to work. And it didn't work, and it's not going to work. And the reason is that mobile free-to-play is very data-driven, very complex, and it's very, very tough before launch to know anything about what you're doing. Before you have real data and real interaction with the audience, the idea that a publisher can make a smart bet on a game, it's very, very difficult. The idea that a developer will know what to expect is very, very difficult. For that reason, there's a huge gap of expectations. And what I'll tell you in the presentation, what you'll see is how we basically decided one day to stop it completely, stop talking to developers before the games are launched, and starting our model with games that are already out in the market, whether they're out in the market 2 days or 2 months or 2 years. And then the promise is, as you see on the slide, that's the bottom line. Can we as a publisher make a developer more successful? When he comes to us, he has maybe a modest success, but the whole point is that after he's with us, we want to make sure that it's a massive success. So it's not from zero to hero. It's coming from a place where he comes to us with X, and we will take it 5X or 10X, okay? By the way, if you want to ask questions in the meantime, I will see them on the screen, so feel free to do so. Okay, let's start. So why did I say that traditional publishing doesn't work? What's the real issue? The real issue is that the gaming industry at large is a hit-driven business. That makes it very, very tough for investors. That's why investors are usually a bit shy about investing in mobile and in games in general. There's more now interest because the industry is booming like never before. But all in all, investors and publishers have a very tough business. What Tilting Point decided to do by moving to this new model of starting with the live games is to stop guessing. Like, can we actually look at the game and predict how successful it could be? So what we do is we find those developers that have really great talent and good games out there, and we found out, we call it power up. How can we power them up? How we can scale them? How we can make them much bigger? Now, the second phase is, which I'll show you very soon, is, okay, if I start a partnership like this, and I took a game that is already in the market, and I powered it up, I made it much bigger, now the question is, how can I continue working with this team? Because we already got a partnership going, we already got some trust going. So how do I take it to the next level and do something even bigger with them? And I'll tell you how we do it. And again, the whole process here is about reducing risk. The risk in free-to-play is so big because you can make a beautiful game that will be zero in revenue. And you can make a crappy game that can scale really well. It's really tough to know because a lot of it is about user acquisition, for example. So my point is, the whole process that we do here is about reducing risk for everyone, the developer, the publisher, the investors. And then our model that was developed over the years is called progressive publishing, which is the idea that because free-to-play presents so much risk and it's so dependent on data and it's so complex, let's do something progressive. Let's go with the developer step by step and not jump immediately to say, oh, this is going to be the next Superscale. This is going to the next Supercell. This is going to be the next Rovio. This is going to be a crazy hit. No, it's going to be about how we take what we have and make it much bigger. How we take then what we did and make it even more big. It's not going to be that everything we'll do is going to be top 10 or top 25, but it's going to be about how can I take a game that otherwise will be top 1,000 grossing, in revenue, and make it 500 grossing, and then make it 200 grossing, right? Hope it makes sense. So let's look at what progressive publishing means. And again, don't think only about tilting point. Think about it, what it means to developers. Think about what it means to you. The beginning of the work together is all about data. We believe that in today's market, in mobile especially, if you're a developer and you are in free-to-play and you want to monetize, you need to be a data-obsessed developer. For many of you, it's obvious, but there's layers of sophistication. And I would say some of the developers that I meet on a daily basis, they are at level 1. They would look at retention, they would look at ARPDAU, they would look at kind of the usual suspects, but there is an even higher level of sophistication of developers that already understand that if their game cannot scale with user acquisition that is data-driven, they have a big problem. So they already think in terms of, what is my CPI? What is going to be my return on ad spend? And many of them understand already the language of marketing, even if they don't have the resources or the money to do it. Okay? So this is the beginning. This is how we find developers. Then what happens at tilting point is that there are two options from here. The more immediate one is to do what we call live publishing, which again is the reason we say live is because the game is already out there in the market. And the next phase will be co-development. Let's start with live publishing. Live publishing means that I meet a developer that already has a game in the market. They might run user acquisition already, or they know that the game can scale and they're looking for help. The other thing that we did, and I'll talk about it later some more for those of you interested in the business side of it, the one thing that is very important is that we wanted to create a partnership that acknowledges that the developer is the one that took the risk, okay? We understand that we're not like the publisher of the old days that maybe promised the moon, but also gave a lot of money before launch and took a lot of risk. Of course, that if we come in and the data is already there and the developer did everything, got money from elsewhere and got into the market, of course, I can't come to him and say, I want 50% of your game. So in this stage of live publishing, we came with models that are what I call low friction, low barrier. I'm not coming and saying I'm taking 50%. I'm trying to do something that I know what I can bring you, but you're also going to give back in the same level. You're not going to give me now half of your pie. You're going to give me something that is fairly reasonable for what I can give you. And I can give you a lot. I can give you millions of dollars, for example, in user acquisition, if the game can handle it. But it's still not the full risk that you took by taking the game to market. So this is live publishing. And what we can do here is user acquisition funding. We can manage the user acquisition and the marketing. And we have also packages that give a bit more. You guys talked about monetization. You guys talked about other services like that marketing team can give, like ASO. We can help with ad monetization. We can help with featuring, obviously, because we are in the US and we're very close to Apple and Google. And but again, it will still stay in a place where I'm not coming and taking over everything. I'm going to try to very specifically and precisely support you where it matters. Okay? The co-development is a different story. After I know you, after we met and we worked together and we worked on a live game and we scaled the game, now we come in and we say, okay, let's do a new game. But again, remember, we are very risk averse because we know how risky it is. We're not going to do something completely different and innovative. And we are going to say, if this is already proven, you have an engine as a developer that is proven and can scale, let me come. I'll bring a brand. I'll help with maybe a license, and we'll do a new game, but it's going to be the next version of this, okay? It's going to be like version 2.0, and it's going to be with an IP that can help a lot in free-to-play because it brings a lot of organics and it also lowers the CPI, and it will be basically the next step in our relationship. In this next step, I'm already going to invest much more money also on development because I feel much more comfortable to do it because I know what I'm basing my bet on, right? I'm not basing my bet on a game with no data. I'm basing think about how many things I already figured out. I know that we work well together as a publisher and developer. I know the engine. I know that it can scale. I know that we know how to monetize it. And all I do is make it even better. Then the last stage, by the way, it's not a must. Obviously, it's just developers that want it. We started to do something with acquisitions that we can either buy the studio, but it keeps on running independently, or we buy games. We might say, for example, if we do this new game, this new exciting game, we might buy your previous game to give you a lot of cash, millions of dollars, and you can focus on your next step. So again, this works when there is an alignment. It's super based on data. We know exactly what's the game, what's the old game, what's the new game. We know exactly to project how much money it's going to make. So that's the model that we developed. It's a bit complex, but if you think about it, it's a very natural progression. Let's talk about sourcing for a second, how we do it. We look at tons of games every month. 100 of them we probably take into a much more serious consideration. Then we test 10 of them, and then we usually sign 1 or 2 a month. Now, how do we do it? Obviously, there's the traditional thing like we do here. We will come to conferences and we're going to meet developers. But the more interesting thing is that we also have an algorithm that we know how to filter games on App Annie or Sensor Tower, and we already know what parameters are going to make a potential of scaling. Again, we filter live games that are already out there, and we come out to them and we reach out to them. Obviously, now we have a lot of incoming as well, but we come out to them and we say, look, we think your game can scale. Would you let us to test it? And then it's always the first step is about sharing data, testing the game, because without data, nothing matters. I know it sounds a bit harsh that sometimes it's almost like data matters in mobile more than anything. But you have to remember that, of course, the data is a result of all the rest, right? The great creative, the great art, the monetization. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to, will it scale or will it not scale? One other thing that I wanted to mention that publishers can bring developers is some more robust technology. We developed three technologies. One of them actually we bought, Gondola. But the 3 areas that I feel that publishers can help a lot is in technology are acquisition, bidding, user acquisition, LTV, monetization, and creative. So on the first one, we developed a technology that optimizes UA. Again, I can't emphasize enough how much user acquisition matters in these days, that it's so hard to get discovered otherwise on the store, whether it's Apple or Google. And basically, Dora was a system that we developed already 3 years ago to automate the process and optimize the process, which allows us to manage many more games together. Gondola, that's what we acquired, but we now own it, is a smart technology that makes LTV optimized. For example, the idea that you're not going to show the same players the same offers or packages, right? You're not going to show the same ads to the same users. If another example, if the currency in Brazil is much weaker than the dollar, then they can't pay the same price, right? I can't show them the same price. So this is another thing that Gondola does. And the last one is more internal, but it's very impressive in what it can do for the developer, is the idea that we can create a huge amount of creatives for ads. And in today's market that is so competitive, the more ads, the more diversity you can create, the better. We have in today's campaign sometimes 10 different ads for 1 week, one game. So it's insane, but it could be seven statics, 2 videos, and 1 playable ad per week. These are really, really insane numbers. And if we didn't have this technology to support, it would have been very tough. Then we go to the next stage, which could be the co-development, as I said. These are the places that we can bring much more than just user acquisition. And these are the places that, again, the game is already live. We're taking it and improving it. It's not going to be about making something new. It's going to be, how do we make it better with community, with social media, with design, with monetization, etc. But at the end of the day, in everything that I said, the star, the rock star, the protagonist is the developer, is not us. We are only helping, supporting, pushing, but if the developer doesn't have the creative force and the passion and the drive, nothing of that matters, right? And the last one is about acquisitions. We usually, I won't go too much into it, but we usually look at games in certain genres. We want the developer to be a developer that masters a certain genre, that has the ability to create more and more games in the same vein. And it's not someone who goes all over the place. It's someone who has a very specific agenda. And as a result, we have a very diverse portfolio. Over the years, we have now something like 30 plus games. These are the games that we acquired. One of them is Star Trek, a game that made more than 100 million in revenue. Narcos made more than 60 million. These are the games that we did as co-development or doing. Some of them are still in development. SpongeBob launched this year to a great success. And the live publishing are those games that just started the process with us, and we're helping them to scale and to grow. Some of them are not even, by the way, on our seller account on the App Store. They're not even Tilting Point. They're still showing as the developer. Maybe before I continue, we'll give you a couple of minutes to see. I know it's hard on Zoom to interact. I want to hear from you. If you have any questions, if there are any things that you want me to explain or anything that you want to expand on. So we'll give you a couple of minutes just to ask a question. Okay. And the moderator, if you want to translate or anything, that's probably a good time.
Yeah, sure. There were actually a couple of answers to your question at the beginning of the lecture. Have you seen them?
Yeah. I refer to the audience and the monetization. Definitely good answers. And I also try to explain why, as much as the publisher can help, why it's so difficult to do it before launch versus, when the game is already live and we know exactly what to expect and we know to predict what's the improvement we're going to make. We can tell the developer, we can take you from X to Y, because it's much easier to look at what's out there and predict success. But I do want to give it a couple of minutes in case anyone has a question.
While we're waiting for the questions from the chat, I can ask you a couple.
Yeah.
The first one is, how do you think a publisher can differentiate itself from other publishers? What is the value that a publisher can differentiate themselves with, and developers should look for this? For what value should developers look for?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So look, the first differentiator obviously was when we started with this model, was the idea that we moved to live publishing. So that was a big differentiator because the whole industry was still looking at games before launch, and it was a big difference. Today, a lot of people started to obviously replicate the model and compete with us. So today, if you have a live game, we're not going to be the only option. There are going to be more options. So to your question, I would say, look at, if I was a developer, and I was a developer in my past, which is also a reason why I understand both perspectives, I would look for someone that, even from the interaction with them, through the process of evaluation and negotiation, I feel that someone that wants me as a long-term partner, that wants me to, that doesn't just is coming for a one-time success, that he really cares about both sides being benefiting, And I think that that partnership aspect is huge because, of course, I will look at the financials. Of course, I will look at the predictions. Of course, I will. But my point is, it's a process, It's even that my best deals, my best partnerships were partnerships that the developer challenged us and wanted to see exactly what the numbers mean. And we worked together and we compared P&Ls and they grilled us and we grilled them. So I think that you need to think about it not only as a one deal, but you're building a partnership that can last 5 and 7 years. So you need to think, is this guy or his team that I met, do I want to get into marriage with them for 5, 7 years? It's a big decision. And I think that you need someone you can trust, and you need someone that you think is really going to make a difference. Because otherwise, look, I met a lot of developers, especially those that did it in the traditional way, that are stuck. They gave their game. The publisher is not doing much with it because they expected something else, because they did the bet before the launch. And the game is stuck. It's not growing. It will never grow. And it's a shame. It's a shame.
Thank you for your answer. And there are a couple of questions.
Yeah. So one question is about genres. So as you see, we have a very diverse portfolio. We have, you see here, even social casino, and even one game that is very successful now in kind of hyper casual or kind of super casual. So we are very diverse. We try to get specialities, and this is also about acquisition, as I said, that we will one day want to have acquired a studio in every genre. I would say that we're very strong in SLG, strategy games, with a few titles that we have here. I think that we're very interested in RPGs. We have a few here. We're very interested in casual, like SpongeBob, cooking game. We had great success with it. So we were pretty open. We have even narrative titles like Arcana or Adventure Escape Mysteries. So I think we're very open to a large range of genres. I don't think we're the first one to go to with hyper casual, because there are publishers that this is what they do every day. But we also want, for example, to expand our sports portfolio. We think that sports is not exploited enough. So the answer is very diverse. Hyper casual, probably not something we're focusing on too much, but we are open to. And the main thing is that you really want to work with this genre for a long time. You want to really be the master of that genre. The other question is if it's only mobile. Look, we were looking at free to play in general, right? We have games on PC that are free to play. We are now even taking games to Switch, Nintendo. We are exploring Apple Arcade now, which is mobile but different. So we're open. At the end of the day, though, when we say mobile first, is because in terms of our ability to scale a game, it's still mobile, the place where you can do it in a great way. It's very tough to do it on PC because of Steam, because of all kinds of reasons. It's tough. It's tough to do it in other platforms. In mobile, you can still do it and do it very successfully. IDFA is coming. If people know, it's the point where Apple is going to block the tracking of users. So it's going to hurt user acquisition and micro-targeting. But I'm sure that the industry is going to handle that like they handle a lot of things. And I think that mobile will still be a place where you can really grow a game based on data and based on and bringing audiences. Okay, let's continue. I want to just in the next part, I talked about Kiev, the fact that we have an office. I wanted to, and I also mentioned the idea of that I'm coming from game development, and I think that a good publisher, maybe it's another answer of which publisher you want to find. Go to publishers that come from games, that made games before. So a lot of the people at Tilting Point, they come from games companies. I see another question. You evaluate risk, look for long-term relationship, bigger profits. What about the risk for the developers? So one thing, for example, that comes a lot in negotiation with developers is how they would be able, if it's a small developer and they have only one game, how they would be able to maintain themselves. So I feel many times in the negotiation, it's my obligation to make sure that even if I pour a lot of money into user acquisition on behalf of the game and the developer, I'm not drying the developer out. I'll try to explain it. So when a game scales a lot, and let's say that the payback for the investment of the user acquisition, the marketing, takes time, like 6 months. If I pour a lot of money into the game, the result could be that the developer doesn't necessarily is going to see the same revenue that he saw before, because there is a delay until the investment is going to come back. So I see it as my obligation to make sure that the developer is not dried out, because that would be the worst thing ever. Same thing with co-development. If I do a new project with a developer, and even if I give them money for development, it's not enough to give them money before launch. It's very important to make sure that they have enough money post-launch on a monthly basis to keep running the game, because a free-to-play game is not a game for 1 year, 2 years. It's a game that can be out there for 5, 7, 10 years, So in terms of that risk, I need to make sure that when I bring a developer in no way I'm going to dry them out, because otherwise I actually did worse than anything. I need to make sure that whatever happens, not only the revenue grows, but they have this sustained way to keep maintaining the game, and enough incentive. That's also important. If I took all the share and I took everything and I didn't leave the developer incentive to get an upside, that's also something that we need to avoid, right? So I just want to maybe for the end focus a bit more on the beginning of the process, kind of the live scaling. What does it actually mean? So here I show you that it's a very unique position that we took in the industry, because until now, nobody looked at live games until we came. Now there are more, but the idea that we start there. Another thing that we did at the beginning that is very important is we announced the first ever user acquisition fund. So basically we came to the market and said, we raised a significant amount of money from partners. And we basically said to the market at one point, we can spend as much as $132 million a year in user acquisition. It doesn't mean that I have a war chest of 132 million. Obviously, with user acquisition, those of you who know how it works, some of the money is coming back and you reinvest it, but it's still a very significant ability. And that was a very breaking news to the industry, that someone is willing to really take their user acquisition risk in funding. The other thing that I wanted to talk about a bit more in the beginning of the process, in the live publishing, is what does it mean? What do you need? Even if the developer does it himself, I would say that this is still true. You need the expertise, which is becoming more and more sophisticated in user acquisition and scale. You need the tech. It's becoming more and more critical to have the tech that allows you to look at data in the most efficient way and to bid and to learn from what you do. And you need to have quality and quantity in creatives. And let's talk about creative a bit. Perhaps there's nothing more important and that can give you an edge than creative in the ads. There are a lot of things you can do, but at the end of the day, everybody else is also going to advertise. Sometimes people are going to advertise games that are really the same as yours or similar, and you need to have creatives that are very, very enticing, very smart, and to make it all the time fresh. Same with videos. As I said, we create dozens of videos every week. We have in Barcelona a team of 30 people doing just that. So we are all the time creating more and more content and enjoying it. And the last one is playables, something that is becoming more popular, still in early stages, the idea that you can actually play the ad. So it's not just ad for the game, but you can almost like test it in a way. We're not doing a lot of those, obviously, compared to videos and statics, but we do quite a bit. And then, I think that again, I'm going to the very beginning, that I meet a developer the first time. I think this is really important, the idea that I'm not trying to force the developer on a certain way of working together. I'm really trying to open the door. It's really about beginning the relationship. So just like I'm not going to marry someone on the first date, I'm trying to find a way that we can help. And from light to heavy, we can help a lot. We can help, we can help only with capital, or we can help with much more. So it's really about a conversation. What do you need? What do you really need that you think I need to explain to you what I can offer for sure, but it's more about what you need. And then the other thing is also to give flexibility in how you want the deal to work financially. I could do a rev share, like profit share more accurately, but I can also do fee-based deals. There are deals that we do that are basically taking a percentage of the spend of the user acquisition and not even talking about taking an upside of the revenue, if it makes sense. Look, I can show you some case studies, very interesting ones. One that I really like I'm going to jump into it because I think it demonstrates the whole story of Tilting Point or a publisher that can really help a developer. That was a developer that we saw on our algorithm as something that is very interesting. That developer, when we met him, was making 20,000 a month, which is nice, and he did the game alone. It's a one-man game. And the game is unique because nobody has a game like this. It's a game that teaches you and simulates terraforming, how to go to planets worldwide and to turn them from inhabitable, like a planet that is really not good to live on, to a planet that is really can accommodate life. You think about Mars, turning Mars into a colony. And so it's like SimCity in space, but all science-based. And the guy alone already was pretty successful. But he came to us with 20K a month, only iOS. He wasn't even on Google. And he never worked with publishers. He's very indie. And I started speaking to him, and I started telling him that the game can be much, much bigger than what it is now, or when he came to us. And it's not easy to convince someone like that it's his main source for living. And but I could convince him, and then we started to do user acquisition. And this game scaled more than any other game we ever saw. It scaled 10x. So from 20K a month, we had months that the game made 700,000. And it's still making a lot of money. And it crossed the 10 million mark. And the guy from a one-man studio, now he has 7 people in his studio. Now he's working on his next game. Later, we even bought the game from him recently. So we gave him a lot of cash to do his next thing. And the game is continuing to perform very well. And this is a case that I'm saying it's a unique case because if you looked at the game before we invested in it, you would find it very hard to believe that this is going to be a game that will make in lifetime $15 or $20 million, because it's a niche. The game is very, very, kind of nerdy. It's text-based. A lot of it is text-based. Now we're going to improve it after we acquired it. But my point is the original game was really not a game that looks like anything else. The monetization there is very weird. It's really not working like any other thing. But I think that what worked for this game and made it scalable to those levels is that it is unique. And in this market, if you find something unique that works well with your audience, you can scale it, because the ads for Terra Genesis were going to look very different than any other thing. A lot of people are trying to work in the same place that everybody else works, like middle-aged fantasy RPG. There are so many of those, It's just very hard to succeed because the CPI is going to be so high. The market is not going to let you scale the game. So maybe the lesson here is try to come to a place in terms of art style and focus that is very different than other places, while you're actually taking maybe monetization and other practices from the market. So it's like, don't completely innovate in every aspect, but at least try to be, in terms of audience, art, and theme, try to be very different. Look, I can show you other cases, but I think that maybe it's a good time to get a few more questions from the audience, and about anything, publishing in free-to-play, anything about what to think about, what to prepare for. Any question that you, the moderator, or the audience would like to focus on?
Thank you very much for your experience, for sharing your experience.